Hello, my friends. Tonight we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be reading a longer story. It is called a chapter book, and it has a couple different parts to it, and they're divided into chapters, and it doesn't have quite as many pictures on every page. So it has a lot of words and maybe one or two pictures to show you what's going on. So Rachel's going to be reading to you from the book, and then I will turn the pages to show you what the illustration is. And this is the book by the fantasy author Ursula K. Le Guin, and she writes about wonderful kind of magical things that can happen. And in this book, as you can see on the cover, it is about some cats who can fly. And this book is called Cat Wings. And you may know that Rachel liked this book when I was a little girl, and I actually have a little stuffed animal who has little wings on her back. So this is my Cat Wings. So she's going to hang out with us tonight while we read some of the chapters from this book. And it has, again, it has a lot of words to it, so I won't always be showing you the picture, but I'll turn it when there is something to see. And so this family of cat is born in the city, and it's very busy and pretty dangerous for them because there's a lot of cars and dogs and things that would fight them. And so they actually live underneath, a dumpster, a big garbage can where all the yucky trash goes. So that's their home. Not the best life, huh? All right, now let's meet them. Their mother's name is Mrs. Jane Tabby, and the kittens are Thelma is one of the girls, and Harriet is the other. And there are two boys. There's Roger and James. All right, let's get reading. Mrs. Jane Tabby could not explain why all four of her children had wings. I suppose their father was a fly-by-night, a neighbor said, and laughed unpleasantly, sneaking round the dumpster. Maybe they have wings because I dreamed before they were born that I could fly away from this neighborhood, said Mrs. Jane Tabby. Thelma, your face is dirty. Wash it. Roger, stop hitting James. Harriet, when you purr, you should close your eyes part way and knead me with your front paws. Yes, that's the way. How is the milk this morning, children? It's very good this morning. It's very good, Mother, thank you, they said. There they are, sitting with their wonderful Mama Cat. They were beautiful children and well brought up, but Mrs. Tabby was worried about them secretly. It really was a terrible neighborhood and getting worse. Car wheels and truck wheels rolling past all day, rubbish and litter, that's all the garbage, hungry dogs, endless shoes and boots walking, running, stamping, kicking, nowhere safe and quiet, and less to eat. Most of the sparrows had moved away. The rats were fierce and dangerous, and the mice were shy and scrawny. So again, here is the dumpster under which they live, and it's just in the middle of this dirty city street, lots of cars going by, even hungry dogs. Ooh, pretty sharp teeth on that dog, huh? If you're a little kitten. Let's see. So the children's wings were the least of Mrs. Tabby's worries. She washed those silky wings every day along with chins and paws and tails and wondered about them now and then, but she worked too hard finding food and bringing up the family to think much about things she didn't understand. But when the huge dog chased little Harriet and cornered her behind the garbage can, lunging at her with open, white-toothed jaws, and Harriet, with one desperate mew, flew straight up into the air and over the dog's staring head. There she is, making her escape. And lighted up on the rooftop. Well, then Mrs. Tabby understood. The dog went off growling, its tail between its legs. That's why my children have wings, so they can fly and escape dangerous dogs. Come down now, Harriet, their mother called. Children, Come here, please, all of you." They all came back to the dumpster. Harriet was trembling, oh, so scary. The others all purred with her till she was calm, and then Mrs. Jane Tabby said, "Children, I dreamed a dream before you were born, and I see now what it meant. This is not a good place to grow up in, and you have wings to fly away from it. I want you to do that. I know you've been practicing. I saw James flying across the alley last night. And yes, I saw you doing nosedives too, Roger. I think you are ready. I want you to have a good dinner and fly away, far away." "But, Mother," said Thelma, and burst into tears. "I have no wish to leave," said Mrs. Tabby quietly. "My work is here. Mr. Tom Jones proposed to me last night, and I intend to accept him. I don't want you children underfoot." All the children wept, but they knew that that is the way it must be with cat families. So in cat families, the kittens don't stay with their mother forever. They go off on their own. They were proud, too, that their mother trusted them to look after themselves. So all together they had a good dinner from the garbage can that the dog had kicked over, and then Thelma, Roger, James, and Harriet purred goodbye to their dear mother, and one after another they spread their wings and flew up over the alley, over the roofs, and away. There they are, taking off. Mrs. Jane Tabby watched them. Her heart was full of fear and pride. "They are remarkable children, Jane," said Mr. Tom Jones in his soft, deep voice. "Ours will be remarkable too, Tom," said Mrs. Tabby. They're planning to have some more kittens. Chapter 2. As Thelma, Roger, James, and Harriet flew on, all they could see beneath them, mile after mile, was the city's roofs and the city's streets. A pigeon came swooping up to join them. It flew along with them, peering at them uneasily from its little round red eye. "What kind of birds are you, anyway?" it finally asked. "Passenger pigeons," James said promptly. Harriet mewed with laughter. The pigeon jumped in midair, stared at her, and then turned and swooped away from them in a great quick curve. "I wish I could fly like that," said Roger. "Pigeons are really silly," James muttered. "But my wings ache already." "Oh, they're getting sore and tired," Roger said. And Thelma said, "So do mine. Let's land somewhere and rest." Little Harriet was already heading down towards a church steeple. They clung to the carvings on the church wood and got a drink of water from the roof gutters. And here is the picture. They're lapping up water on the church roof. "Sitting in the catbird seat," sang Harriet, perched on a pinnacle. "It looks different over there," said Thelma, pointing her nose to the west. "It looks softer." They all gazed earnestly westward, but cats don't see in the distance clearly. "Well, if it's different, let's try it," said James, and they set off again. They could not fly with untiring ease like the pigeons. Mrs. Tabby had seen to it that they ate well, so they were quite plump and had to beat their wings hard to keep their weight aloft. They're a little bit heavy. There they are, getting ready to flap. They learned how to glide, not beating their wings and letting the wind bear them up, but Harriet found gliding difficult and wobbled badly. After another hour or so, they landed on a huge factory roof, and even though the air there smelled terrible, they slept there for a while in a weary, furry heap. They're getting a little worn out. Then, towards nightfall, and they were very hungry, for nothing gives an appetite like flying, they awoke and flew on. The sun set. The city lights came on, long strings and chains of lights below them, stretching out towards the darkness. Towards darkness they flew, and at last, when around them and under them everything was dark except for one twinkling light over on the hill, they descended slowly from the air and landed on the ground. A soft ground, a strange ground. The only ground they knew was pavement, asphalt, and cement. This was all new to them. Dirt, earth, dead leaves, grass, twigs, mushrooms, worms. It all smelled extremely interesting. A little creek ran nearby. They heard the song of it and went to drink, for they were very thirsty. After drinking, Roger stayed crouching on the bank, his nose almost in the water and his eyes gazing. Here they are, coming down to land. Their first time in the woods. "What is that in the water?" said Roger. "What can it be?" The others came and gazed. They could just make out something moving in the water in the starlight. A silvery flicker, a gleam. Roger's paw shot out. "I think it's dinner," he said. "Yum, yum, yum." After dinner, they curled up together again under a bush and fell asleep. But first Thelma, then Roger, then James, and then small Harriet would lift their head up and open one eye, listen for a moment, on guard. They knew that they had come to a much better place than the alley, but they also knew that every place is dangerous, whether you are a fish or a cat, or even a cat with wings. So there they are, sleeping under a bush, but they keep waking up in the night and peeking out to make sure that they're safe. Chapter 3. And we're going to see how the other animals feel about cat wings moving into the forest. "It's absolutely unfair," the thrush cried. That's this little brown bird right here. "It's not fair." "Unjust," the finch agreed. "Intolerable," yelled the blue jay. "I don't see why you're so upset." A mouse said, "You've always had wings. Now they do. What's unfair about that?" The fish in the creek said nothing. Fish never do. Few people know what fish think about injustice or anything else. "I was bringing a twig to the nest just this morning and a cat flew down. A cat flew down from the top of the home oak and grinned at me mid-air," the thrush said, and all the other songbirds cried, "Shocking! Unheard of! It shouldn't be allowed!" "You could try making tunnels," said the mouse, and trotted off. The birds had to learn to get along with the flying tabby cats. Most of the birds, in fact, were much more frightened and outraged than they were endangered, since they were far better flyers than Roger, Thelma, Harriet, and James. The birds never got their wings tangled up in pine branches, and never absent-mindedly bumped into tree trunks, and when pursued, they could easily escape by speeding up or taking evasive action. So the birds are very good at flying. Whereas the cats are just kind of learning to use their wings, and they're like bloop, 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 and bumping into trees. Oh my. But they were alarmed, and with good cause, about their fledglings, the baby birds that are just learning to fly. Many birds had eggs in the nest now, and when the babies hatched, how would they be kept safe from a cat who could fly up and perch on the slenderest branch among the thickest leaves? They're worried their babies might end up as dinner for the cats. It took a while for the owl to understand this. The owl is not a quick thinker. She is a long thinker. Here's the picture of the owl. It was late in spring one evening, when she was gazing fondly at her two new owlets, that she saw James flitting by chasing bats, and she thought slowly, "This will not do." And softly Owl spread her great gray wings and silently flew after James, her talons opening. Let's see. Oh, I hope James is going to be okay. The flying tabbies had made their nest in a hole halfway up a big elm tree, above fox and coyote level, and too small for raccoons to get in. Thelma and Harriet were washing each other's necks and talking over the day's adventures when they heard a pitiful crying at the foot of the tree. "James!" cried Harriet. He was crouching under the bushes, all scratched and bleeding, and one of his wings dragged upon the ground. "It was the owl," he said, when his sisters had helped him climb painfully up the tree trunk into their home hole. "I just escaped. She caught me, but I scratched her and she let go for a moment." And just then Roger came scrambling into the nest with his eyes round and black and full of fear. "She's after me!" he cried. "The owl!" Oh no, it followed them home. They all washed James's wounds, that means his cuts and scratches, until he fell asleep. "Now we know how the little birds feel," said Thelma grimly. "What will James do?" Harriet whispered. "Will he ever be able to fly again?" "He had better not," said a soft, large voice just outside the door. The owl was sitting there. The tabby cats looked at one another. They did not say a word till morning came. At sunrise, Thelma peered cautiously out. The owl was gone. "Until this evening," said Thelma. "From then on they had to hunt in the daytime and hide in their nest all night, for the owl thinks slowly, but the owl thinks long." James was ill for days. That means he was very sick, and he could not hunt at all. When he recovered, he was very thin and could not fly much, for his left wing soon grew stiff and lame. That means he can't flap the wing that the owl scratched. But he never complained. He was being very brave. He sat for hours by the creek, his wings folded, fishing. The fish did not complain either. They never do. So even though he couldn't fly to catch food anymore, he just sat by the river and used his paw to catch fish. One night of early summer, the tabby cats were all curled in their home hole, rather tired and discouraged. A raccoon family was quarreling loudly in the next tree. Thelma had found nothing to eat all day but a shrew. It's like a little mouse. And it had given her indigestion. That means she has an upset tummy. A coyote had chased Roger away from the wood rat he had been about to catch that afternoon. James's fishing had been unsuccessful. The owl kept flying past on silent wings, saying nothing. 2 young male raccoons in the next tree started a fight, cursing and shouting insults. All the other raccoons joined in, screeching and swearing. "It sounds just as bad as the old alley," James remarked. "Do you remember all the shoes that would walk by?" Harriet asked dreamily. She was looking quite plump, perhaps because she was so small. Her sisters and brothers had become thin and rather scruffy. "Yes," James said, "some of them chased me once." "And do you remember the hands?" Roger asked. "Yes," Thelma said, "some of them picked me up once when I was a kitten." "What did they do, the hands?" Harriet asked. "It squeezed me. It hurt." And the hands person was shouting, "Wings, wings, look, it has wings." That's what it kept shouting in its silly voice, and it kept squeezing me. "What did you do?" "I bit it," said Thelma with modest pride. "Ouch!" And it dropped me, and I ran back to Mother under the dumpster. I didn't know how to fly yet. "I saw one today," said Harriet. "A what? A hand? Some shoes?" asked Thelma. "You saw a human being?" said James. You mean a human being?" Roger said. "Yes," said Harriet. "It saw me too." "Did it chase you? Did it kick you? Did it throw things at you?" "No. It just stood and watched me flying, and its eyes got round just like our eyes." "Mother always said," Thelma remarked thoughtfully, "that if you found the right kind of hands, you'd never have to hunt again. But if you found the wrong kind, it would be worse than dogs," she said. "I think that this one is the right kind of hands," said Harriet. "What makes you think so?" Roger asked, sounding like their mother. because it ran off, and it came back with a plateful of dinner. There's a little dish on a stump, Harriet said. It put the dinner down on the big stump at the edge of the field where we scared the cows that day, you know. And then it went off quite a ways and sat down, and it just watched me. So I flew over and I ate the dinner. It was an interesting meal, like what we used to get in the alley, but fresher. And, said Harriet, sounding like their mother, I'm going to go back tomorrow and see what's on that stump. Well, you just be careful, Harriet Tabby, said Thelma, sounding even more like their mother. Ooh, they're all trying to boss each other around a little bit. We made it to chapter 4, you guys. The next day, when Harriet went to the big stump at the edge of the cow pasture, flying low and cautiously, she found a tin pie plate of meat scraps and kibbled cat food waiting for her. The girl from Overhill Farm was also waiting for her, sitting about 20 feet away from the stump, holding very still. Susan Brown was her name, and she was 8 years old. She watched Harriet flying out of the woods and hover like a fat hummingbird over the stump, then settle down and fold her wings neatly and eat. Susan Brown held her breath. Her eyes grew round. She can't believe she saw a flying cat. The next day, when Harriet and Roger flew cautiously out of the woods and hovered over the stump, Susan was sitting about 15 feet away. She got a little bit closer. And beside her sat her 12-year-old brother, Hank. So here are the two children at the farm. And they're sitting there seeing if the catwings are going to eat the food they left for them. Now, her brother, Hank, he had not believed a word she had said about flying cats. Now his eyes were perfectly round, and he was holding his breath. Harriet and Roger settled down to eat. You didn't say there were 2 of them, Hank whispered to his sister. Harriet and Roger sat on the stump, licking their whiskers clean. You didn't say there were 2 of them, Roger whispered to his sister. I didn't know, both the sisters whispered back. There was only 1 yesterday. But they look nice, don't they? The next day, Hank and Susan put out 2 pie tins of cat dinner on the stump, and then went 10 steps away and sat down in the grass and waited, trying to see if they can get even closer. Harriet flew boldly in from the woods and alighted on the stump. Roger followed her, and then, "Oh, look!" Susan whispered. Then came Thelma, flying very slowly with a disapproving expression on her face. And finally, "Oh, look, look!" Susan whispered. James, flying low and lame, he's finally able to fly a little bit. He flapped over to the stump, landed on it, and began to eat. He ate and ate and ate. He even growled once at Thelma, who moved to the other side of the pie tin. Poor James, he was still getting better from having his wing hurt, so he was very hungry. The 2 children watched the 4 winged cats. Harriet, quite full, washed her face and watched the children. Thelma finished a last tasty kibble and washed her left front paw and gazed at the children as well. Suddenly, she flew up from the stump and straight at them. They ducked as she went over. She flew right round both of their heads and then back to the stump. Testing, she said to Harriet, James, and Roger. If she does that again, don't try and catch her, Hank said to Susan. It might scare her off. Oh, I wouldn't be so silly, Susan hissed. They sat still. The cat sat still. The cows ate grass nearby. The sun shone. Kitty, Susan said in a soft, high voice. Kitty, kit, 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 kitty cat, kitty, 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 cat wings, cat wings. Harriet jumped off the stump into the air, performed a cartwheel, and flew loop-de-loop over to Susan. She landed on Susan's shoulder and sat there, holding on tight and purring in Susan's ear. Oh my goodness, look at that. She's come over for a cuddle. I will never, ever, ever try to catch you or put you in a cage or do anything you don't want me to do, Susan said to Harriet. I promise. Hank, you must promise too. Purr, said Harriet. I promise, and will never, ever tell anyone else that we saw you, Hank said rather fiercely. Ever, because you know how people are. If people saw them, they'd try and put them in a cage or put them in a show. I promise, said Susan. She and Hank shook hands, promising. Roger flew gracefully over and landed on Hank's shoulder. Purr, said Roger. They could live in the old barn, Susan said. Nobody ever goes there but us. There's that dove cove up in the loft with all those holes in the wall where the doves flew in and out. We could take hay up there and make them a place to sleep, Hank said. Purr, said Roger. Very softly and gently, Hank raised his hand and stroked Roger right between the wings. Woo, said James, watching. He jumped down off the stump and came trotting over to the children. He sat down near Susan's shoes. Very slowly and gently, Susan reached down and scratched James under the chin and behind the ears. Oh, it looks like he likes it. There they are, getting lots of pets and cuddles. Purr, said James, and drooled a little on Susan's shoe. Oh, well, said Thelma, having cleaned up the last of the cold roast beef. She arose in the air and flew over with great dignity and sat down right in Hank's lap, folded her wings, and said, Purr, 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 purr. Oh, Hank, Susan whispered, their wings are furry. Oh, James, Harriet whispered, their hands are kind. Do you remember they were looking for the right kind of hands to treat them as a pet? They finally found a nice human who would take care of them and keep them safe and not lock them in a cage and say, hey, look, come see this cat with wings. They found two very special children who would help take care of them. So, thank you for coming on this extra long chapter book adventure with me. And this is actually book 1 in a series. So if you look on the back, a series is when there's more than one book about the same characters. So this was the first book, Cat Wings, and the next book is called Cat Wings Returns. And so maybe we'll get to have a listen to that one sometime too, and you can find out what happens to the cat family next. I hope you enjoyed it and you got to see my little friend Thelma the Cat Wings, and this has been one of the really books that I wanted to share with you guys, so I hope you like having it as one of our storytime videos. I love you guys so much. I miss you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!